Welcome to the first of our opening weekend conversations on 65,000 Years, A Short History of Australian Art. It's wonderful to see so many gathered here today, and also Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us today, and artists. It's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary honour. It's also good to have Marcia Langton and Shanisa McConville here, the three curators who've worked together so closely on this project. We are gathered together on the Payan freshwater country of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. These lands and waters were never ceded. They always were and always will be Aboriginal land. I pay my respect to the Wurundjeri elders past, present and emerging, and particularly to Uncle Bill Nicholson for his great support and guidance on this exhibition, and also all the artists and custodians and art centre managers who have guided us in the selection and the appropriateness of the works that we have chosen to display in this exhibition. I want to pay particular thanks to Erin Milne and Isabel Frias Corona of our engagement team for their brilliant organisation of this opening weekend. And I also pay tribute to the special administration skills of Rebecca Hall in booking flights and accommodation, and also Marcia Langton's generosity in ensuring that all artists are met at the airport and their transfers are arranged. 65,000 Years, A Short History of Australian Art subverts a linear chronological reading of history. It was very important for us as curators to acknowledge the great work of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. And therefore, in our atrium, we covered the Napier Waller stained glass window with a screen-printed textile of women's pandanus baskets from Inulluk Arts, a design made by 4 Gumwingu weavers of the escarpment country. And also we acquired 50 woven objects from across Arnhem land, together with 2 new commissions from the southeast, supported by Ruth and Peter McMullen, who we acknowledge here today. It's wonderful to be joined today by Kathy Wirrpanda on my right, a Judy Japu artist, a bark painter, and also a knowledge holder. And we also have with us today Sandra Aitken and Melissa Aitken, Gunditj Mara, great weavers of eel traps, and together we are going to talk about the special knowledge that women hold in the making, the gathering, the process and making of special cultural objects, and how that knowledge is passed down to younger members of their particular clans and families. Sorry, I should have had that up before. I'd like to throw this conversation first to Sandra. Sandra has a very moving story to share with us today about how she learnt to weave and how this customary knowledge going back to 65,000 years has been passed down in her own family despite opposition from the mission where her family has been located. Thank you, Sandra. And also Melissa is going to join in when needed.
Well, I'm speaking first, and then Mum's going to talk about how Auntie Con was taught and how she was taught, but I'm beforehand. I know things has happened on different missions throughout Australia, but I'm only going to talk about Gunjamala country, Lake Condah area. The traditional practice of basket weaving was almost lost due to European settlements in the far west of Victoria in the early 1800s. Luckily, one family of women has successfully continued the cultural practice way before the early 1800s to the present day, and ensuring the practice will continue on in the future. Jenny Green, which is on the top left corner, she is my 3 great-grandmother and my mother's 2 great-grandmother. She was born on the shores of Lake Condah in 1838 to parents who had moved inland to escape from the ghost people, which I've got a story about the years. I used to say that Jenny Green was born in 1825, and that was the completely wrong year. And when I found out when she was born, the real date, which was 1838, the weight off my shoulders was lifted. Jenny used to weave on her foot, as you can see in the picture. She used the punyard grass, or also known as spear grass, because the seeds on the top of the grass is like the shape of a spear, to make eel baskets to trap food such as fish and eels, which was part of her traditional diet. Jenny used the grass as green as she picked it, or blackened in coals of a fire for a stronger and more rigid traps. Jenny passed on her traditional craft and knowledge to her grandson's wife, Frances Alberts, née Carter, who was born at the Lake Condah Mission on the 29th of August 1889. When Jenny Green passed away on the 10th of January 1908 at the Ararat Armdale Asylum, Frances continued to weave baskets as well as small purses and handkerchief baskets to provide extra income at the Lake Condah Mission. As the story on all Aboriginal missions in Victoria, Lake Condah Mission manager told Frances and the other elders that they were not allowed to pass on the traditional weaving to their daughters, because the mission was coming into the white people's way of living. So that is why we lost a lot of culture. But Auntie Connie Hart, née Alberts, also known as Auntie Connie Hart or Auntie Con, Auntie Con was one of Frances' daughters, took peeks at and having a go at her mother's work when nobody was around. Because of that, the skill survived. Constance Charlotte Hart, née Alberts, born on the 3rd of October in 1917 at Little Dunmore near Hayward. Now, this next passage is about Auntie Con from the book in which Aboriginal people talk about their lives. I don't know what it's called, but from her own words, I'm going to pass it to my mum. And this is how Auntie Con was learnt.
From Auntie Connie, own words. No one taught me to make my baskets. I used to watch my mother do it And when she put her basket down and went outside, I picked it up and did some stitches. When I heard her come back, I would shove it away and run away. I was a great one for sitting among the old people because I knew I was learning something by just watching them. But if I asked a question, they would say, "Run away, Connie, go and play with the rest of the kids." They didn't want us to learn, my mum told me. We were coming into the white people's way of living, so she wouldn't teach us. That is why we lost a lot of culture, but I tricked her. I watched her and I watched those old people and I sneaked a stitch or two. I was about 7 when I used to go to my... I was about 7 when I used to have a go of my mother's work. I didn't make a basket until she died in 1963. It must have been 40 years. But I remember the stitch, I remember the grass, I picked some grass and I went home and started to do the stitch. The first basket I made was a little one, but I was frightened to do it. Then I went on to make mats. I think if my mother was alive today, she would have knocked my head off, but have gone on to better things. My stitch is very tight, where most baskets makers pull theirs loose. I put my finger behind and pull tight. Everyone say my work is fine. I'm growing my own grass in the garden. I hope it will spread along the fence and I'll just go down and get some whenever I want it. To make a good basket, patience would be the first thing, and to pull tight for that tight stitch. So that is how Aitken was learnt to weave. But my daughter Melissa did some calculations and found out that it wasn't 40 years. It was actually 20 years after Aitken that passed away before she started to do the stitch. Because when Aitken's mother Frances passed in 1963, 40 years from 1963 would have been the year 2003, and Aitken passed away in 1993. As I know that Aitken has made over 50 items in 10 years, such as eel nets, baskets, bags and baby carrier. Now, this is how I was taught to weave. During the early 1980s, Aitken was asked by her nieces to teach the skill to them, but she kept on saying no. No matter how many times we asked, she would always say no. Because due to the rules that was imposed on the Aboriginal people that was living at the mission, Aitken was very reluctant to pass the skill on, as she thought they would be laughed at by the white people and possibly be removed from her house, or her nieces' children would have been removed from her house, and the nieces have been... That doesn't make sense.
Which would have been
my daughters and my nieces and nephews would have been removed from their parents. But finally she agreed in the end and said yes. but it was taught behind locked doors and windows and with the curtains closed. But when we knew how to weave, we went out and told the community. Auntie Connie was afraid to go out and teach because of the rules, but she finally taught at schools and to any women who wanted to learn to weave. Weaving baskets out of traditional grass is a woman's business. Men can't touch the punya grass until the basket or eel net traps are completely finished. Because I was told that our ancestors had some kind of suspicion that if males touched the grass, something bad would happen to them. But Melissa and I do teach males to weave. They use raffia, string or hay bale twine. Other materials that we use are raffia, string, hay bale twine, copper wire, whippersnipper cord, wool, paper twine, plastic bags, polyester, yarn, rope and garden twine. We have taught all kinds of people from the ages 3 years old to elderlies in the nursing homes. We have done daycares, early learning centres, primary, secondary school, TAFE, uni students, VATCO staff, local Aboriginal health services like Hamilton, Hayward, Portland and Warrnambool, Port Fairy Council, Mount Lure and Mount Sugarloaf come to explore days at Camperdown, the National Gallery of Australia in Canberra, Nursing Home in Mortlake, Curie Heritage Trust, Warrnambool Art Gallery, Warrnambool Community Garden, the Fitzroy Garden. We have sold work as commissioned for the Melbourne Uni, Potter Museum, the engineering building. Melissa made a 2-metre eel net for the Wirrpanda Centre. Curie Heritage Trust, Geoscience in Canberra, Gunja Meering, a private collection from Melbourne, Hospital, the Epworth Hospital in Melbourne, the Warrnambool Art Gallery, types of things that we have made. Plenty of eel nets and traps, vacuum cleaner and a mix master. I've got a picture of that.
Yeah, but not on screen.
Clams with pearls, a Barbie doll hat, butter and sugar bowl, salt and pepper shaker, poppies, my version of trees, little shoes, glasses with the glasses case, game of quoits, unique spiders and jellyfish, baby mobiles, woven wool hangers and copper wire holders. Candle holder. That's it.
I think we need to give Sandra and Melissa a round of applause for that special history that they have shared with us today of how precious this design tradition and process is, and how important it is to share this knowledge with wide and far. And that is why the University of Melbourne, that is why we, in this exhibition, decided that having seen the work that Sandra had made for the University of Melbourne, she was the first artist we approached to commission a work for 65,000 years, and you can see the work here on the screen and hanging at the entrance of our exhibition. The other thing, just to mention people who are in Melbourne, is that Auntie Connie Hart is having a solo exhibition at the Koori Heritage Trust of her magnificent weavings. She is the great exponent in Victoria, paralleling the work of Yvonne Kulmatri, who represented Australia at the Venice Biennale of 1998, and her work is hanging in the ground floor galleries. It's important now that I lead Kathy to introduce herself and to discuss with us the materials, the processes and the passing on of knowledge that Yolngu women participate with their kin. And I'll have some images that I will pass and share with Kathy. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. My name's Wirrpanda, as Toricapo. And first upon a time I see my grandfather and grandmother and mother and my father. As most of them I do myself. I see my father and my mother who do the painting, and we to the back. And my partner too, most of them spend time with my partner. Okay. I just talking first time here in this room here, but I just painting. I'm artist. I'm painting myself. I'm painting my Allah. Sometimes I'm working for my partner too. My mother's really teach me. My mother's name is Kalomau Memru, and my grandfather's name is Narikin Memru. But most of that, I see my partner really teach me for my painting, and also I help him for men's ceremony. Not really men's ceremony, but I'm outside ceremony, not men's ceremony. Just I'm making them fire, or just coming out from the bush. I just making the fire for. This the best for the men and women, making fire for Yolngu, for help and this a bit for the family and for people. And also I'll help for my partner for sea ride and night taru for my land. And most of the I'll teach my partner. I just talk to my partner because that's the teacher for me always, and talk to me and what you give you the mind and give knowledge. My mother and my father, mother is gone, but my father is my partner. That's my teach me. And sometimes I'm painting for myself. Sometimes I'll paint for him, help him for painting, for my bag or log. And sometimes I'll help for this men's ceremony too. And also the sea ride help and for my natal child, for my land, back to my land. And sometimes I'm a helpful my initiation too for children. I'm making arms, handbands for initiation, and I just put into paint into the body, just help for my partner for initiation. And also, and not me to involved in men's ceremony, I just outside, not inside. I just wait for the outside for initiation men's ceremony, not for go into men's ceremony, but I just wait for the outside. We're making the fire and making for the just people coming out from the inside to outside. I'm making fire. And also I just make boys and girls putting it to fire for rapidity, like
Thank you very much, Kathy, for explaining your knowledge and sharing how your mentors with us and how you've learnt, and also your role in the community. It's a very important role to complement other members of your family and your partner, and thank you very much for explaining that. It's actually incredible to think today about the great contributions that your mother has made in bark painting, one of the pioneering women, and your grandfather's role in passing that on to your mother. I remember a solo exhibition here in Melbourne of her phenomenal paintings and carvings here in Melbourne, which was a sellout. We also have in our exhibition work of some wonderful Yolngu women artists, and to see that coming to the fore is something that we are very importantly and acknowledging and celebrating in our exhibition. Could I just ask you a couple of things about the fibre the grasses that you gather? It's different from the pungot grass that Melissa and Sandra have told us about. Could you talk about the gathering, the sort of materials that you use, and also the dyes, and then maybe we talk a little bit about the ochres as well, the earth pigments. I think that'd be very interesting when we survey these weavings that we have in our exhibition. That would help us to understand a little bit more about them as well.
I just never see it. I just always go to see all the weavings for my auntie, but I don't know learn to making the weavings. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I'm really experienced for the arts.
Yes, your experience for the painting.
Painting, yes.
Yes, yes. But what about the stringy bark and the ochres? Could you tell us a little bit about that and how you gather those, or what you are working with?
To the arts?
Yes, yes.
I just using the rock for this, get all the sea, black and red, yellow. We just go for the sea, beach, and you get all the rock,
Yes.
colorful rocks. and just go to the grinding in the rock, different colors like red, yellow, and black, and make the clay in the sea or in the land, the white clay, and just making in the separate in the box separately, like red, black, and yellow, and just white. And I'll cut the hair for this painting. Any hairs, just cut and making in the cotton wool or stick, and I'll start the painting. And I'll use the brush in the shop.
Thank you so much for explaining that to us today. It is an incredible skill that is shown. I wanted to ask a question or two to Melissa today. Melissa, a spotlight on you. You're quite a historian. I can see that the dates really matter. Now, could you tell us how you learnt to weave?
I would have been about 9 and 10. Well, I've learnt basket weaving through my mother and Aitken. One of her baskets have got a couple of stitches in it, which every time we do workshops I always mention it because I'm proud of it. So, because every time Mum used to go away to play indoor cricket, she always leaves me and my sister at Aitken's, and we used to stay there, and Aitken used to show us how to split the grass, which I'll never do again for her, because she showed us how. My sister split it, and when it was my turn, it didn't split right. But she did show us the stitch, and took me a while to learn how to start by myself. Always ask Mum, how do you start, or how do you bind it, and how to finish it off. But I knew how to do the stitch, which is a blanket stitch, and I also found out it's also a buttonhole stitch. And once I knew how to start and finish off, it would have been last year, I taught my niece how to start, so she knows how to start. And
And what about finding this particular grass? Where does it grow?
Well, everyone's got different spots. Aitken had her area, which I had got another story about that. I don't know if anyone want to hear it.
Yeah, we like a story.
Well, there was Aitken, her grandson Jason, my mother and myself. We all went to Aitken's special spot in a 3-seated ute, which was legal back then. It was a warm day. We all jumped out. Aitken went through the fence first. I went through the fence second. My mum and Jason was halfway through the fence when someone yelled out, "Snake." My mum and Jason bolted back to the ute and jumped on the tray. And here's me kicking the snake that was trying to bite my gumboot. And once it was clear, Aitken moved me away. My mum and Jason finally came in through the fence. We picked some grass, and although in the speech males couldn't touch the grass, so Jason couldn't touch it. And once we picked the grass, as we were leaving, we all left at 4 different spots, so no snakes would attack us again. And 21 years after Aitken passed away, in 2014, I was doing a tapestry course in Warrnambool, and one of the exercises we had to do is we had to weave something what we could remember, and that was the story what I remembered. So I haven't got a picture of it, but I've got it on my phone. I've got the fence. All I remember was wearing blue trousers, black gumboots, and a brown snake trying to bite my boots, and the shape of the spear grass as a tapestry. Yeah.
I think these are the sort of stories that an oral history that really is so important for us to hear, and also for it to be collected and passed down and also published. And it's also very good to hear from Kathy talking about her story, and also for us to remember that the passing on of these design traditions that date back to 65,000 years, through artists themselves, families and custodians, is why today and into the future we can celebrate this incredible revolution that has happened to Australian art, the fantastic Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art that who can tell what shape it's going to take into the future, but it's awe-inspiring to know that this continues into the next millennium, and at last we are honouring and giving centre stage to Indigenous women who have risen to the forefront. It came very late, the names, the opportunities, the enablement of women to paint on bark, to paint on canvas, for the makers of weavings to be acknowledged and recorded, and for women to be listened to as holders of knowledge. And I think today it is so important for us to hear this knowledge, these stories, and to remember that women are a very important part of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander culture and the holding of transmission of knowledge. So I'd like to thank all our speakers today, and also lead everyone into the atrium to have a look at some of these beautiful examples. And also there are some beautiful examples by Yolngu women as well on the first floor. I wish I had a photograph of Kathy's paintings to show you today, but I'm sure you can go onto Bukulange Mulka website, and I'm sure that Will Stubbs or Kathy might have some images on her phone to share with you, because we all want to see these beautiful works, Kathy. Could you join with me, please, in thanking now, just a little word about organisation. Fortunately, I was given this by Isabel to tell you that if you've signed up for many conversations, there will be a 15-minute break between sessions. The only way to come in and out of the room today is through the back door. And I think that, there's plenty of more astonishing sessions. Next session, we are looking at the language of Yolngu art, part 1. So, and that's beginning at 12:30 today. So you've still got 15 minutes to have a quick look at your art on this floor, if you'd like to do that. And I want also everyone to thank, once again, Sandra, Melissa and Kathy. Thank you so much.